So yeah, bring in the party. Anybody who wants to talk and learn about YC apps, how do we improve them? How do we look at what we got right now and
Yeah.
what's it going to feel like?
Should we start with just some general, like, Rishabh, if you want to tell us if you were to apply again, like biggest takeaways or kind of, I'm sure you get
Yeah,
asked about YC tips a lot. Like, what are the things people don't realize that you end up sharing a lot?
Totally. Yeah. Let me pull up the YC application really quick, just so I'm reminded on all the questions. Doot, doot, doot. So I think like one of the biggest ones in terms of the actual application is I think two of the like most powerful questions on the application, in my opinion at least, is like who are your competitors and who might become competitors? Who do you fear most? And then what do you understand about your business that other companies in it just don't get? And the reason for this is one, I mean, I think that generally they're far enough down on the application that a lot of people just kind of not like overlook them, but they seem less important. But honestly, it's like really easy to pitch your idea really well in the initial kind of questions. Like there's no real, debate or contention. But I think with the who are your competitors, who might become competitors, it's like a really good way to show one, like that you're actually thinking clearly about the space. Like it gets really obvious from that question whether or not you actually know the space you're in, and whether you've actually evaluated the competition and done your research there. And then two, it's also like, the answer to the really important question of both like why now and why you, right? You have to answer like why has no one else thought of this or done this before, and also why you're the right person in the right time to kind of do it.
Yeah, totally.
I'm trying to think of other generally helpful tips. I think like for the interview itself, it's basically just like knowing the space. Like again, I think what YC is really looking for are smart people who are willing to put the work in, and what that translates into is just that like you doing your research and you not being able to be like trumped by a YC partner in the 10 minutes of your interview, right? Like if you spend a lot of time on your company and you know the space, there should be no way that any of these YC partners like knows more about you than the space in the 10 minutes they have to ask questions. So that's kind of what they're poking for.
Right. What were the like trickiest questions that you ended up encountering, or if they were too specific, like situations more generally?
Yeah, I'm trying to think back. It was definitely a little while ago. I mean, I think my funny YC story was I applied once and then I didn't get in, and then I applied again 6 months later, and that's when I finally got in. But the first time I had applied with this actually the idea is related to crypto NFTs, just looping back there.
Wow. That's awesome.
The idea was basically to have a trust that bought stocks and then essentially minted NFTs for every stock that they had. So they would buy like 10 shares of Tesla and then mint like 10 Tesla NFTs. Essentially, I guess they're not technically NFTs; they'd be more like normal tokens. And then sold them on crypto exchanges. And the idea being that any U.S. investor could redeem those tokens back to the trust, and the trust would sell those shares and give the proceeds in USD back to the person who deposited the token. And so the idea would be that like these tokens would essentially represent shares, and the benefits there is you could do 24/7 365 trading. You could do like fractional trading. Like that wasn't I know now that like Public and a couple others have done that, but at the time no one was really doing fractional trading. And once you put stuff on the blockchain, you can take advantage of DeFi, right? So when all this DeFi stuff is coming out, plus the idea that you can like take these tokens and do cool stuff with smart contracts, like you can essentially make a smart contract that maintains like an index fund of these tokens, for example. And basically, I went into the interview with this idea, and I had done a few calls with some lawyers trying to figure out how to like structure the trust, just like the bare bones, like how this would kind of work. And I go into the interview, and one of the partners is actually a lawyer. I'm like, oh, so we'll structure it like this. This is how the trust would work. He's like, no, that won't work. I'm a lawyer, and I like that doesn't
Oh
work.
no.
And I was like, and then I like tried to defend myself and just kept drilling down into that. So it was like 10 minutes of me being like, well, I don't know law, but it seems like there could be a way to do this. And he's like, no, there absolutely is not a way to do this. Which I think there technically is. It's just like, you're essentially going to be spending 2 years in a room with lawyers instead of actually building anything first. But that was fun.
So given what you know now, if you felt like you ran into a situation where you were somebody's knowledge was going to trump yours, what would you do? How would you handle it?
Yeah. So I think like one of the important things I kind of took away was one, if you're if you're kind of stumped, if they ask you a question that, you don't know, or, uh, you're kind of stumped in any other way, like one big thing to do is just admit that like you don't know. Like it's way worse to just keep going down that hole, because I think it just continues to reveal that you don't know as much as you're trying to put on. And it's better
Mm-hmm.
to just, take the L in that one point and then kind of just move the process along. Like hopefully you can recover enough, and like if you got stumped on one question and the rest of it goes swimmingly, like I'm sure that you still have a very decent shot of getting in.
Right. It seems like there's probably certain ways, kind of the way media training works. You're sort of taught to accept a question and kind of, bring it around to something that you want to talk about rather than the thing that maybe they stumped you on. So I wonder if there are good techniques that, one could develop to help sort of be more on your, think more on your feet in that interview process while kind of navigating towards the stuff that you want to talk about, while genuinely approaching their answers, but just sort of admitting you don't know.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's definitely a big one. The other thing that's occurring to me now is also just, I think, looking through your application, kind of pulling out the 3 or 4 really, really strong points, like, put them in a bulleted list, like run them by friends, like, you know, and after people hear these 3 or 4 bullet points, like they should want to essentially invest in you, right? It should ignore all the bad stuff, just be like,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is. And it could be, your team is extraordinary. It could be, you already have expertise in this field. It could be a really good answer to like, why now? It could be like the market is massive. It could be any one of these things. But essentially what you want to do is you kind of want to put those points in, and you kind of want to kind of reiterate them whenever possible. And this doesn't mean like hijack questions and, if they're
Right.
asking about the market, don't suddenly start talking about the team or whatever. But as much as you can, try to bring up those points over and over again, because I think what people end up doing is kind of just instead, they obviously, there's going to be like 10 or 15 like smaller, weaker points that are like little points to your favor, but people try to sprinkle in all of these like 15 points. And I feel like, and this is my guess because I've never been in like, the YC partner's shoes. I guess is at the end of the day when, people are thinking back on the interviews they've heard, it's way more compelling when you can remember like, oh, that person, they had like that amazing team and that amazing market, instead of, oh, this other person who like, oh, they said like 10 different things and they were all like kind of good, but I don't really remember like what were they building again, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. It's cool. So that sounds like some good. Any other kind of overall kind of abstract meta questions that we should address?
Michelle. Michelle is literally in this process right now.
Yeah.
I want to hear more about your actual application too, but
Yeah.
do you have any like overall questions that have been top of mind for you?
Yeah. The points that you're making are really important. I was actually just thinking about the reiterating of the points as much as possible, and I'm curious about your thoughts on using like numbers in the app. I've been going through and kind of giving the app a little bit of meat instead of just like making things sound a little bit more general. But once you start going down like the numbers, you're kind of compelled to keep putting more on, and there's kind of like a balance between like brevity and numbers. What are your opinions? Numbers, balance?
Yeah, I think that there's a couple of questions where they really landed. Like for example, I think there's one that's like, what is it? How much money could you make? Like that should be, there should be some narrative around that too. Obviously, it shouldn't just be like a math equation, but there should be a lot of numbers, and it should be like look well researched, right?
Yeah.
Like when I was doing mine, I literally like looked up numbers, and I was just like, I even said like, as of 2012, there's like 100,000 businesses with over 100 employees, employing a total of like 75 million people, and then go into a little bit of narrative, and then go into like how much you can charge per head and stuff like that. So I think those like there's 1 or 2 questions like that are really big on numbers. The rest of it, and this is obviously not a universal sort of law, right? I don't actually know what you're making or whatever. There's definitely like some companies that lend themselves better to this than others, but I think for the rest of it, it's okay to include a number here or there, but it's way more important to have like a solid narrative.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's been really great so far to go through this process. It really makes you think hard. We were just joking earlier at the startup school that I was telling you all about how like these questions are so basic. They're like, what are you making? Like, why are you making it? And you're just like, okay, that's all I need for my head to explode a little bit. Why am I making this? When I was born. No, it's been great.
There's some like existential like dread underneath underneath it all.
Yeah, oh my God.
Oh my God.
Especially when you start like working with climate and stuff like that, you're like, how much, where do I begin? No, it's great. Let me think
But
about.
yeah, I mean, I don't think we've like officially met. So hello, I would love to hear like what you are actually building.
Cool. I'm Michelle. Nice to meet you. I know Mishti and David through Renko. Are you familiar with Renko?
Runco?
Renko, Renaissance Collective?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
I
So
didn't know
we
the
have
cool
the
hip nickname, but yes.
Renko, yeah. There's like another Renaissance Collective that has nothing to do with this that you can find online pretty easily. But yeah, so I'm applying this time. I've been working on the company for about 6 weeks. I'm previously, I spent about a decade in oil and gas and kind of like flipped to the other side now. So working on a very climate forward initiative. I'm making low carb mushroom noodles that are like a source of alternative protein, and essentially scaling that process with industrial fermentation. So if you think about some of like the really cool companies out in SF, which is, I imagine you live in SF, right?
Yeah.
So like Prime Roots is out there that's doing some really cool stuff, or over in Colorado, Meaty Co. Just making meat analogs. I'm actually focusing on the carb market. So starting with noodles, but kind of moving more towards like culturally relevant and very ingrained foods like rice, tortillas, and stuff. But essentially looking at how do you merge a health problem, obesity and diabetes that is very strong around the world, but specifically in the US, and a climate problem. Like we need to figure out how to make food in a more efficient way. And we also need to give people protein alternatives. So kind of merging those two together.
That's awesome. That's super cool.
Yeah.
How did you like what gave you the idea for like mushrooms as carbs?
Yeah, I had originally like gone into this field kind of thinking like, oh, I really want to work with fermentation. I mean, I a couple years ago ran a wastewater treatment plant, and that's kind of like a fermentation. It's a bioreactor, and just was amazed by the potential that microbes have, because literally their job is just like eat things and multiply like crazy. And so when I found out that people were using them in the food space to like, really make some significant environmental changes to the food system, I was like, oh my God, I need to get involved. But then like I talked to a whole bunch of people before I left ExxonMobil. I kind of used them all as my guinea pigs, and I was like, let's talk about food. And essentially just like did a ton of user interviews about like people's relationships with food. And like people weren't really talking about the environment. They were more so talking about how like they were really upset that their favorite food was like pasta or like mac and cheese, but their doctor told them that they have to eat half of it because they're pre-diabetic. Or my favorite was like somebody who was like, I love working out, but I'm always going to have a little belly because I refuse to give up my tortillas. And so that kind of opened my mind up to, food and diet really with heavy carbs being kind of like a big deal in a lot of people's lives. Even kind of looking like within my own family, like 4 out of 7 people are trying to reduce carbs because of inflammatory diseases. And they're like ages 28 to 65. It's literally like all over. So I ended up with kind of this carb space and still looking at some pretty significant environmental benefits. Probably not as much as like a meat analog, but definitely a lot of like water reduction. When I was at wastewater, actually every time summer would start, like spring and summer, we would see like how bad the fertilizer and pesticide runoff was. So it kind of is like a combination of all my worlds.
That's awesome. I mean, that's super cool that you started from like a, let's fix the climate perspective, but then you figured out how to like also align incentives so that people would actually want to eat this.
Yeah, I mean, that was the idea, right? Like, what's actually driving consumer behavior to change at the store? And can I like piggyback off of that to kind of squeeze in like a little climate efficiency? And the biggest thing is like, and I think this kind of comes from like working in an industry that maybe is a little less like open-minded. When you want people to move towards more of a plant-based diet, you got to give people options. And you know, with some of my coworkers, I even had a hard time getting people to eat shrimp sometimes. You know what I mean? So like you kind of have to give people an option that's like culturally fitting and also like fitting within people's comfort level. And so I think that there's really great innovation happening in that meat analog space, but it's really good also to give people like the mac and cheese that's a comfort food that also has the protein alternative.
Totally. And I also feel like there's probably like less strong opinions. Like I have definitely met a couple people who are like staunchly against stuff like Impossible Foods because they're like, oh, they're trying to take away, you know, my steak or whatever, right? And I'm always gonna eat like real steak. But I feel like there's hopefully less, you know, people who are just like, they're never gonna take away my tortillas.
Yeah. Oh my God. Let me tell you, I used to work at this free health clinic here in Chicago because once upon a time I wanted to be a doctor. That did not happen. But anyway, I used to work at this clinic, and pretty much like 95% of the patients that would come through were on some type of like diabetes prevention or management plan. And every single conversation that I translated between the doctor and the patients was about reducing tortillas. And it sounds funny, but it's like from a cultural standpoint, if you grew up eating tortillas and that is like your delivery mechanism for the rest of the things on the plate, like it's very, very difficult to cut back on that. And, you know, it was actually quite shocking. You'd be talking to people everywhere from like someone who's like, okay, maybe diabetes runs in my family, I should probably take care of myself, to like, so we really need to talk about this potential amputation that's coming up. And you just really connect how diet is super important.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fun time.
Yeah.
I am making noodles in my house, making my entire apartment smell like mushrooms.
Also, I see him here. I don't know if you guys know him. Wait, let's get him up. Fellow founder. I don't know how much like YC interaction you've had, Ayush, but
Hello.
Hey guys, good to see you. I was just hanging around because it's like the YC application season again. And so I thought they would tweet that. Also, I'm just like secretly a fan of being the small circle there and having my videos. So keep lurking around.
whatever you prefer. But here's Ayush's Twitter and startup also, Trestle, which is super awesome. But I mean, you must have gone through some similar stuff. Like, I don't know how formalized your startup journey was, Ayush, but pitching. Oh, did we lose him for a sec? Oh, you're back. But like pitching investors, and did you do a lot of this kind of like trying to distill and write up your mission and interviews with different people? What was that process like, or what do you wish you knew when you were going through that?
Oh, just doing the same thing again and again, 100 times over, expecting a different result. I think that sounds familiar, but it was great. I think you know, it's the before, when you were a first-time founder, and before you actually go through all this, you think that, you know, being a founder is cool. And then you do it 100 times. No, I'm just kidding. But I think, yeah, particularly to YC, I think some really people in the Bay Area, especially, I found are really helpful. People who have done it before or have gone through similar experiences. I'm trying to do what people did to me over the last 2 days. I was just recovering from a cold, but I just yeah, it's not COVID. It's all good.
I heard you say COVID. I was like, wow, you're looking great.
It's just cold, but it's a great experience. I think just because I think I remember, I think I've interviewed for YC twice in person. And it's like a biannual ritual which we do. And in the last 5-7 years, I've done like twice, and it is great. Like, it's just a 10-minute thing, and things happen so quickly, and you're trying to, you know, sit outside. One of the tips I give people is to not play Eminem songs. It seems like it's helpful before going in. It's not.
Doesn't pump you up.
Yeah, exactly. I think I remember me and my co-founder went in hearing that one short song over and over.
Is this
again.
Hamilton?
That is so funny. Wow.
So yeah, totally not helpful. But otherwise, I think it's just great. I think it's that time of the season in which we also see how helpful everyone else is in the valley, right? And that giving back culture is so amazing.
What are the most valuable things that either of you pulled from YC? What made it
I think
worth it?
clarity of thought. I think they really pushes. I think applying for YC, irrespective of whether you want to go in or not, is really useful because I think just the experience of trying to summarize everything you're doing in 10 minutes makes you think as a founder, come sort of little above the operational sort of activities you've been into,
Yeah.
and think about it from a broad perspective. Step out, take a view, and get that clarity, and that's super helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I even tell people like who aren't interested in doing YC to still, like, if they're starting a company or anything, to fill out the YC application, because it's just like a really good way to, like, write down your thoughts and answer all the questions you need to kind of about a business, right? Regardless of whether you actually want to apply or not.
Yeah.
So I totally plus one to that. The other thing is, like, I guess it's kind of hard to describe. It's sort of like, you go into the program, and it's just like coming back every week, obviously, and seeing how far your batchmates have kind of come. It kind of pushes you really hard, and by the end of it, you're just like, wow, that's a crazy amount of stuff that I've been able to achieve with this kind of like social pressure in like 10 weeks or whatever, however long it's, like 10 or 12 weeks. Right. And you're just like, I cannot believe that I got, like, you kind of feel like superhuman for a little bit. And I think the lesson coming out of that is just that, any one of us could do so much in 10 weeks, given the right kind of, I don't know, environment.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how people get motivated working from home. I'm sure it'll be just fine, but different this year.
Totally. I mean, maybe I don't know if they've already said that. I mean, like, hopefully the application is for like the summer batch, right? When does that start?
I think it starts in May. It is
Oh,
remote
okay.
this year. Well, most
Okay.
people are able to do it remotely.
Yeah. No, I know that they've been doing it remote. I just wonder if they're, like, what their plan is, if they are ever gonna come back to doing it fully physical.
I'm curious if vaccinated founders have extra points.
Hopefully they'll get vaccines for anyone who joins.
There is actually in Chicago, there's this one kind of like workshop space, like incubator-ish type of environment, and they classify as a manufacturing facility so everybody can get vaccinated.
That's awesome. Yeah. I heard that in LA they just have, like, so many unbooked appointments. It's insane. Like, I've been seeing, like, pages of them. Yeah.
Wow. Second shot founders get.
Yeah.
It's such a cool rumor to spread. Hey guys, did you hear? Second founders are getting Captain YC. Second shot founders, that's a new thing. Not second time founder, second shot founders.
I have a question for you all about the app, actually, that now that I'm thinking about it. Does YC value a shorter app, like not that much detail, get straight to the point, or do they, is it worth it to express your idea without trying to be too short?
I think my opinion is that's, like, there's, like, a happy middle, right? Like, I think it's kind of like, writing a good blog post where you want it to have enough depth that you can get across all of your points and make sure that they understand it. But at the same time, like, obviously you don't want it to be huge and rambling. Because, like, definitely, like, I know that, like, the way that even the initial screenings go, it's really, there's a couple of people who are reading them, and they have to read, like, a ton. Like, they're reading, I think, like, at least 10s per hour, and I would not be surprised if that number goes over 100, right?
Right.
And so a lot of it is, like, I mean, obviously before they invite you for an interview, there are going to be people who are doing deeper reads, but, like, on the initial passes, they are going to be more scans and everything, and if your kind of points are deeply buried in there, it's going to be tough for those people to get to them.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think the best advice which I've got there is that the whole point of the first initial application is that you get the interview. And the advice was to basically write the YC application, then try to bucket things into what is valuable and then what is super valuable. and then just get rid of everything which is valuable. It's like a good framework to get better clarity of thought.
Yeah, no, I see that. It's a good thought.
Do you talk much today about? I know I was looking through the app that you have, and there's the section on how far along are you, and I wondered, is that an area that you'd want to share a little bit about here, and see if there's, do you want to refine sort of how you talk about your progress at all?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah. So let me turn to it really quickly. So I'm prototyping two things in parallel. And then you kind of joined in a little bit later, but essentially my company is a biotech company making food products. And essentially I'm making a low carb mushroom noodle that offers a protein alternative to people. But to make it scalable, which fun fact, mushrooms do not have that much mass. To make it scalable, you have to use fermentation. Otherwise, you're waiting like weeks to grow mushrooms and then they shrink to like this much.
So does fermentation accelerate the ability to grow?
Yeah.
It accelerates the speed at which they grow?
Yeah, because you can essentially, this is like the best part about microbes, you can essentially figure out where the microbes grow at an exponential phase and like hold it there until you can't hold it anymore. So people are able to hold their process at exponential growth for like weeks at a time. So if you can really like tighten up your engineering in that space, you can just like really, really lower the cost of your production just by cranking out a ton of product. But anyway,
you're kind of building YC for mushrooms. You're going to accelerate them into life.
Giving them the happy space.
I'm reading through your app right now, and I love the minimum viable noodle. This is great. This is amazing.
That was one of our Renko members' idea. They were like, seems like you need to make a minimum viable noodle. But yeah, okay, so I'm prototyping in parallel. So essentially I use mushroom flour to make like the actual edible product and start testing with people like, okay, is it too slimy? Is it too hard? What do you like about it? What don't you like about it? And in the meantime, I'm actually like, to my neighbors, they probably think I'm making drugs, but I have a little lab in my house and I'm running the fermentation and essentially like screening different types of fungal strains and figuring out like, what do they like? What temperature do they not like? It's literally like a dog. And so by the time that I'm able to like scale that up, you start small and then you keep making your experiment get larger. I'm going to get that and make it into a flour and like replace it into the formulation I already have going on. So I wrote it in two pieces, like my front end and my back end. Yeah, so curious if you think that that's a good method.
I'm just reading through it right now just to get it better.
Sure. I can add it here in case you want to take a look at it.
Can we comment on this Google Doc?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It looks relatively clean now, but thanks to all of our wonderful Renko members, I had such great feedback, but literally the whole thing was highlighted last night.
Oh, that's awesome. I think it's saying request edit access to me. Do you have open to anyone with the link?
Yeah, let me just check. Really? Yeah, anyone with the link. Did I give you the right one?
Yeah, I also have request edit access.
Okay, maybe I give you the wrong one. Try that one. Let me delete this. Yeah, I can't delete that. Try the most recent one.
I still see the same. I think you need to have anyone with the link can edit. Maybe it's that anyone with the link can view right now.
It's like a sharing setting or something.
You're right. You're right. You're right.
对，因为也是对，说实话，我也不是特别懂这个律师这一块的事情。对。
Is somebody playing a video?
Oh, it might be my housemates talking. Oh yeah. So
you got a good headset.
Yeah, I mean, I read through it. I think it's pretty good. I like it.
Thanks. I'm tightening up the last part a little bit further. But yeah, you should have seen it yesterday. It was less concise. Um,
I actually shared a app called Hemingway app. It's pretty cool. Where you can basically uh, make any paragraph etc. cleaner. So
oh
I
my
use
god, I love this.
yeah, it's pretty cool. Makes all the sentences smaller and
Wow.
helps
Oh,
you.
wow.
Yeah,
This is the
so
best. We need to put this onto our Runco resources.
yeah.
Thank you. That's really great. I have a question about founders. I was talking to this one potential co-founder, and I don't think it's going to work out. So I'm going to be going into YC, and you can see it in my application as solo founder. What's the status on that? What's the scoop? We don't like solo founders.
I got in as a solo founder, so it is
Oh,
dope.
okay, great.
Yeah, yeah. I
Excellent.
think I'm trying to think of like
Were you
I mean, I think
cautious about that at the time too?
yeah. I mean, it's definitely I'm not gonna lie. It's definitely gonna be a little bit tougher, right? Like,
Oh,
I think what I tell people is like, obviously, you just want to minimize kind of the yellow or red flags on your application as much as possible, and being a solo founder is kind of going to be on there. But I think that you're still in a pretty good spot in terms of you are able to kind of like what they normally want is someone technical, but in your case, obviously, you're making the noodles and you can make the noodles, which is definitely a good sign. I think just be like, really honest on like where you are. Like, I think paraphrasing basically what I said was like, look, like, I'm committed to building this regardless of finding a co-founder, but I'm very open to finding one, and I'm actively like kind of looking. And also, I think I mentioned like what I'm looking for, like the stuff that I'm kind of weak in that I was like looking for a co-founder in as well.
Oh, okay, excellent. Excellent. Yeah.
And this is only because they asked. I wouldn't like any weak points like being a solo founder. I wouldn't like bring up in the interview unless they ask about it specifically.
Oh, okay, awesome.
I would guess actually, in given just the uniqueness of this problem space, it's not a SaaS software app like a lot of the kinds of stuff that they probably see. I wonder if the uniqueness actually gives you a little bit of air cover to describe the types of roles that you imagine are going to be part of the early team, and just you can sort of say, look, these are the things that these are the talents and kind of skills and people that I want to bring into the company, but I don't know if we're going to find one person who handles three of these things. Maybe it's something in like the science side, or maybe something in the product development or manufacturing side or the distribution side. And if you can kind of if when somebody challenges you on like why don't you have a co-founder, you actually have a credible reason, because well, there's this manufacturing stuff, there's the science stuff, there's this distribution stuff. And if you can speak to it credibly, like I'm happy to find all of those in one person or find that across three people, but those are going to be early people who want to get involved. And so, it might just help to have like a more, kind of your pitch on why it makes sense to, if you have that tight.
It does show that you've thought through what that strategy would be in case you are going in solo. Yeah, I mean, I see a lot of value to co-founding, but I don't want to rush it if it's going to be
totally
that bit.
Yeah, and I think to add on to DK's point, I think another thing that could be helpful only if you have it is like, if you have like the ideal person for one of these roles in mind, you're like, oh, this friend of mine, like they're currently working this company, but I'm pretty sure I'm trying to convince them that they'd be awesome at this role. Like, again, like only if they ask, but giving like as much thought as you can give it to make sure that they know that. I think like one of the fears is obviously that like someone's going to be super lone wolf and like not willing to work with other people sort of thing, which you can't really scale like a company like that, obviously.
Yeah.
So I think like making sure that they know that you're deliberately thinking about it well is like one of the good pieces.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely. I found that the PhD talent in fermentation science or food science either has a ton of undergrad loans and can't just like work for equity, or needs a visa sponsorship. So you kind of have to have some money on board to kind of help that out. So there's such good talent out there, though.
Actually, I love that answer because it's very specific to what you're working on, and it shows that you've thought about it. And it says, look, I want to find this person, and here's the reasons, and it almost sounds like you have them waiting in the wings already, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I've talked to so many people. There's so many. This is like the interesting thing. So many people are interested in this space, but for financial limitations, are kind of bound to their company. But it's kind of a unique situation for a new space to have so much talent that wants to come with you. You just have to help them overcome that small barrier.
Yep.
Which is not that big of a barrier. It's just money.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, that's really good. That's really good to know. Yeah, I had a friend she's working at Beyond Meat. She's one of the product formulators, and she was just like ready to like go create something on her own and like be in a startup. And she was like, I can't afford it. I'm like, I'll be back
soon. Yeah.
Wow. Also, how did you even start doing this? Like, where did this come from? Were you just in your kitchen, like, let's see what I can do with mushrooms?
I started because I wanted to go work for another company. I mentioned earlier that I worked for wastewater, like a wastewater treatment plant, and I honestly fell in love with microbiology and bioengineering. There's just like so much potential there, just given the fact that microbes multiply for a living and do really amazing things. Like in a refinery, they clean up like arsenic from water, and it's beautiful. But so then I found this company called Nature's Find, which is kind of like a hot company these days in Chicago, and they're using a specific type of fermentation to make meat alternatives. And it kind of got me really interested in that space. And for about a year, I kind of waited for them to like open up jobs and networked and stuff like that. But after a while, just getting to talk to people and figuring out like, what do people want? Like, what's actually a problem? Like, do you even care about the environment when you shop at the grocery store? That's where like it really zeroed in on noodles, which is like super random. I felt a little weird about it at first, but like people kept coming back to like mac and cheese and spaghetti. You know, people eat it a lot. It's fast. It's like, you know, what people grew up with. And yeah, it was like kind of a clear message. Like the potential consumers like spoke to me. I was trying to recreate meat in the beginning. People weren't interested in that in my space.
By the way, I'm just gonna mention because I think the way you talk about this with us right now is great. It sounds fun. You're a little like, oh, microbes, that's what they do for a living. Like that sounds fun and that sounds like you. And I would just encourage you to like remember that and don't get buttoned up or don't try to play a part that's different, because I think if you can sound like that, you sound both like fun as well as intelligent and well researched. I think that is, you know, that's a magnet for all of the rest of the talent and money and people that you want to get together. So just be yourself, I think, is actually an important note I would add.
Thank you. That's encouraging.
No, yeah, I mean, I totally plus one with that. I think like having charisma and confidence wins a lot. Like, I mean, I don't think that this was all of it, but I attribute a great degree of my YC interview success to the fact that it was Halloween, and I like decided to be silly, and I brought in a lemon to the interview. It's like I was holding my laptop and I was like doing the whole interview with like a lemon next to me, and we finished the interview. So it's like 10 minutes, you know, and they knock on the door. Like, your interview's done. I'm getting up to leave. I'm like shaking their hands, and they're like, okay, so we have to ask like, what's up with the lemon? I'm like, oh, well, it's Halloween. I'm life, so I'm here to give you lemons. And they laughed, and I still think that is like a significant part of why they got it.
Also, I mean, it makes sense. Like, you need to give people things to remember. Like you were saying before, your 3 points. But I mean, besides your 3 points, like something about you needs to be also memorable. It's all about the narrative that you're crafting.
Yeah,
sure. Totally.
Also, I feel like it's a great idea to create a highlight of what just Rishab said, so that every YC partner keeps
It only worked because it's Halloween.
no.
You're walking with a watermelon.
That's awesome.
Start that rumor. YC gives extra points to anybody who shows up with produce.
Literally, these interviews, like every single interview, someone brings in some like random fruits, and they're just like, "What? Why does this keep happening?"
Yes.
This is viral video on the internet.
That would be awesome.
That's very brave, though, I gotta say.
Yeah. Have you
I
guys
was
any other like
so
crazy YC stories? Like, what's the lore? I'm very like not in this kind of mythology, but I don't know.
I'm
There's
trying
all
to
these
think.
like Dropbox at YC and like I don't know. What are kind of famous stories or like funny stories that you've heard from other people who've applied or you know?
Um, I think there was the time that there was this like I think there's this CBD lemonade company in my batch, and so they did was I think they were just experimenting with a lot of CBD stuff, and so they one of the things they were experimenting with was like giving people CBD lemonade, and the pitch was like, you know, take it and your anxiety will go down a little bit, and maybe you can take it before bed, you know. And I think the thing with CBD, like I'm not an expert in that space at all, but like usually there's a little bit of THC in there, right? Like a tiny bit. Like the ratio though is like, you know, 20 to 1 to the point where you don't really feel it. But I think just based on this extraction process, it's kind of like it just kind of happens. And so one day they had like a stand set up and like, you know, letting people try their CBD lemonade before the dinner, which is when like the speakers come out. And I also got some CBD lemonade, but like they were like, you know, maybe you want to take it before you sleep or whatever. So I didn't drink it. I just like kept it with me. And basically like so I'm sitting down to dinner, I'm eating, and a couple people like more like, you know, occasionally someone has to like leave for some urgent reason, but most of the time like almost no one leaves. And this time it was like weird. I was like looking at it just like, you know, the dinners are pretty long. They're like you know 2 hours or whatever, and a handful of people are just like leaving. I'm like, what's going on? And I didn't like connect the dots. Like, you know, later that night I think I took it because I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to sleep or whatever. And I got like it was like a full on edible. Like so that was pretty funny. I don't know if I have anything. I don't remember anything like that much crazier than that.
That's awesome. Just drug up everyone at the YC dinner.
Make sure you go first during demo day, so the only thing they remember is your pitch.
Yeah, exactly. I will say that the founders were really cool. They apologized to everyone. I think they fixed their formula. It was actually like turned out to be very cool. I don't want to throw them under the bus. It was just very funny.
That's awesome. What a way to experiment.
Yeah. I hope you don't drug people with your noodles. I'm not giving you any ideas.
Psychedelic noodles, whoa.
I feel like that's an even better pitch, honestly.
Oh my god, let me tell you. It's always a 50-50 chance that when you're talking to mycologists, you have to clarify what edible means.
And we will also track your stream.
TV noodles, yes.
I'm seriously like I've had like conversations where I'm like knees deep in notes with like mycologists, and then I'm like, we're not talking about the same thing.
Honestly, like if you found a way to do that, I think that also would be a really good startup idea. I mean, Silicon Valley is all about psychedelics right now, so you never know.
And they're becoming legalized. Like Oakland just decriminalized them and everything. So you gotta have two versions. You gotta be like, this is for the people who are trying to diet, and this is for the people who are trying to
psychedelic.
I have been wondering, like, you know, like in mycologists, is it just like a thing where like a lot of mycologists are super into psychedelics too? Because like I feel like, you know, if you're super into mushrooms, like, you know, I'm sure some people just really like mushrooms, but you know, there are other people who really like mushrooms for other reasons.
It's hard to speak for everyone, but you definitely, I think like when you interface so much with fungi and mushrooms, like you gain such an appreciation for them. So it's very easy to like gain the medicinal appreciation for them as well. But a lot of people, like I said, probably like half of the people that you talk to are like into medicinal, which is like the more like PC version of saying it. But like, I'm telling you, even some professors that you talk to, it's really cool because you'll go to their website, like their research website, and the moment you see like galaxy backgrounds, you know what you're in for. But for a lot of the people in this space that are using like mushrooms in a more industrial setting, some of the earlier knowledge came from like Paul Stamets, which is like super into psychedelics.
He's
Like,
epic.
he wrote Mycelium Running, which is like everybody's go-to book.
Is that like a textbook, or what is that?
It's kind of like a personal textbook, like not
Okay.
academic, but like, you know, if you want to learn to forage or to appreciate mushrooms.
Right. Right.
Do you know his
Interesting.
origin?
I will maybe throw that on. Like, is it a pretty easy read?
Yeah, it has a ton of pictures. I mean, you won't read it from like front to back, but you'll just like pop into random chapters and learn something like really cool about mushrooms. He has some crazy pictures of mushrooms that are like the size of your forehead. Or like he has a picture where he has his dog sitting on an oyster mushroom that's attached to a tree.
That's wild.
Wow.
So it's called Mycelium Running.
Yeah, I'll link it.
He also seems to be the purveyor of fungi.com.
Yeah, he sells spores.
Great domain. Touch.
Great one-word domain. Yeah.
But he also, I'm not going to get this perfect, but he has this epic origin story of how he got into mushrooms, which was that, like, he was an average student in college or something, and there was some, like, massive storm going on, and he was tripping on mushrooms, and he ended up, like, climbing this telephone pole, and, like, there was lightning, and he almost died and had this, like, mythical near-death experience, and was like, I need to start focusing on school and, like, really go into, like, mycology, and then he did. And now he's pioneer in the field.
There is another book about psychedelics, which is fascinating, and I just can't remember what it's called, but I have it hidden somewhere. I read it a long time ago. But essentially it talks about like the history of psychedelics, and like it goes through LSD and when it was like outlawed, and how there's like an underground community that's always been like really active about pushing like from a scientific standpoint. And there's a part where they talk about like the healing effects for potential like depression and anxiety therapies, and it's like terrifying, but the way that they write it is like fascinating, where they say essentially like you'll have like a therapist kind of like bring you to a comfortable space, and you'll take whatever they give you, and you go through kind of like a near-death experience in your trip, like, and they guide you so that you're calm. But like this near-death experience kind of like gives you a new perspective where you can now appreciate like where you're at, and like it helps you kind of overcome the challenges because they don't look as bad. But they're like, you know, you just like feel like you're gonna die for like a couple seconds, and then it's all better. It's fascinating.
Yeah. Wow. What's been your approach to finding all of these mushroom experts? Like, you were not in this like space at all. So what is it like kind of being the aspiring founder coming in?
A lot of time on Reddit. And on Reddit, and like looking through universities that are strong in mycology. Reddit
Is there
was
like mycology Reddit?
Yeah, mycology and fungi. The mycology Reddit was a really funny one because I was trying to find spores, you know, to like grow my experiments. Which, by the way, I stabbed myself with one of my syringes full of spores. Luckily, I don't know how to activate a syringe, so nothing came into my bloodstream. But it punctured right through my PPE.
This is how you become root. This is
that
habit.
I'm not gonna make it. This one startup didn't make it because founder died in testing. But yeah, so I asked, like, I went on Reddit and I'm like, hey, so we're gonna score some spores, and so people gave me like a ton of sources, and I'm going through, and there's like, they're kind of sketchy, like there's I don't know, like there's a lot of weird commentary, and then so I had to go back and be like, hey, I'm sorry, can you like describe what you mean like by active versus normal? Like which one would I like put on spaghetti? And then they were like, never not active.
Oh my god.
That's incredible. Yeah, I'm just imagining like alternate universe you who like definitely didn't ask that question, just like
Yeah.
I'm like over here in a button up, like, does anyone know how I can score some scores?
Why do I need a Tor browser in Bitcoin?
It was so funny. Like, I was so confused why people kept talking about how they could really trust this person, like, verify, really, really trust this source. I was like, okay. Tiger Money, like that was the username. It was like really interesting.
I really just love so much that like this subreddit, first of all, like of course there's an amazing subreddit for this, and like it actually has been fruitful for you to dig in. There was some tweet like just look for a subreddit with above a certain threshold of users or activity, and that's probably like a good startup.
Yeah, I'm on like the food science subreddit. Like people are helping me with my formula. Then there's like all the mushroom ones, and then there's the biotech one. But even the mushroom ones, I was like, so I'm trying to grow mushrooms in my house. Like, what's the status? And then people are like sending me links on how to like grow this greenhouse. It's been great. It's a hustle out here. My lab is very shifty. People probably think I'm making drugs.
Wait, can we see the lab?
Oh my god, it's like it's in the hallway. I don't think the Wi-Fi goes to the hallway, but I can probably find a picture.
Yeah, I'm so curious.
Yeah, it's just like one of those little greenhouses, like those zip ones, and it's fancy. It's like you zip up the greenhouse, and I have this box inside that's like the walls. I cut out and inserted HEPA filters, and I have these computer fans that are just like forcing air through so that there's like positive air pressure and like you're driving air out instead of like allowing microbes to come in. And I have a reptile heater with temperature control. So like I have a thermocouple that goes into my samples, and every time it reaches a specific temperature, it like turns off the power to the outlet, and it turns off that reptile heating pad.
Wow.
And I have like a reptile tank fogger and a humidity controller that also does the same thing. It's great. I have an air pump. It's like super shifty. Spent a lot of time at PetSmart.
Wow. I love that hustle right there.
It's such a hustle.
That's awesome.
Yeah. The best hustle part though was like I didn't have a spray bottle, so I took like an old face mist that I never used, like a Clinique face mist. I was like, whatever, Rose, bye. And I put alcohol in it, and you could just, it's this big, it's like a travel sample size. And I just essentially every time between samples would just like be spraying the whole entire thing, like, oh man, this face mist really needs some more volume.
Oh my god.
But now I've upgraded equipment.
You should just start like live TikToking part of the process right now. It'll end up being great PR for this company when it eventually happens.
It really would. That's a great idea. Have you thought about doing stuff like that?
No, but I should. That's a good idea.
It does have it. Okay. Without looking, I don't know if anybody looked at the subreddit for mycology, but without looking, anybody who hasn't looked yet, how many members do you think that subreddit has?
Ooh,
this is a good trivia question.
Without looking.
That's really hard.
I'm watching your fingers on the mouse. No clicking.
I'm going to guess 10K, but I'm going to look right now.
Any other guesses?
500.
I'll say 25. I'm optimistic.
You're off by a factor of 10. There's 297,000 members.
Wow, I said 500K. I thought that was crazy. Not that crazy.
Beautiful.
And I mean, the TikTok idea is actually super interesting because it, like everything about this, like, look, we're sitting here laughing about this stuff and kind of joking, and there's these like near miss experiences of like, are we talking about like the science or the entertainment side of this?
The entertainment side.
I know, I should have taken off my bloody glove. Like, whoa! There was like seriously, I don't know how much you guys know about Wisconsin. This is kind of a tangent, but I promise it's related. There's a lot of crap that goes on in Wisconsin.
A lot of what?
There's a lot of crap that goes on in Wisconsin with children. And most famously, the Slender Man like stabbings, where those like little girls took the other little girl to the forest and like tried stabbing one to death because they said Slender Man told them to do that. So that one's famous.
Oh.
She survived and has a show now, but there's another one which is a very tragic story, but it was a whole bunch of kids that went to the woods to find psychedelic mushrooms, and so they just picked up whatever mushrooms they found, dried them, and then huffed them, and the fungi like infested their entire lungs and they died.
Yikes!
Oh, no.
That's all I could think about when I stabbed myself.
Wait, did you say huff them? Like they tried to like snort them?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Wow, they should have consulted the subreddit before they did
I
that.
know. The subreddit has like a whole team of people that helps with identification.
Mm-hmm.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's
Wow.
crazy.
they're very serious about it. They're like, they have rules, and then it's like, if you want to identify your fungus, you have to like show a picture of the top, the bottom, the root, and the gills.
There's even more complexity to it though, because I started trying to go like foraging for mushrooms, and I was on this random hike and found these two really old like Austrian women. And first of all, they were really like secretive about their spot, which I didn't realize this is the thing. You have to not like encroach on other people's foraging spots. But then they showed me like there was one mushroom with the gills, you brush it with a knife, and one of them turned blue right away, and one of them you had to wait like 5 seconds before it turned blue, and like that was the difference between it being deadly poisonous versus like a completely delicious meal to eat. So I was like, wow,
Yikes.
I'm not qualified.
Mushrooms are scary as hell.
Yeah.
That's why my lab's outdoors, like in the hallway, in the communal hallway. I don't want it in my house.
Oh my gosh.
I'm gonna be a bad neighbor instead. No, I'm just kidding. I have to put the filters, but I still don't want it inside.
Oh, I think Ayush was talking, but I think were you muted? Oh, I don't think we can hear you. Do you have a
Did you
headphone
switch
thing?
headphones?
You switched up your headphones, yeah.
Click the ... and fix your settings, maybe.
I love that this is going to be recorded, and it's just going to be like a live stream of mushroom talk.
I know.
Well, this is gonna like, in 5 years we're gonna like tweet this out and be like, remember when Michelle was applying to
Humble beginnings.
I was saying that I just moved here, so I'm just gonna pretend that I don't know anything about what you guys are talking about.
I feel the least educated of anybody in this group about this topic. I think I need to study that subreddit.
Oh no. And I get all my information from David. He's my mentor.
Right, I was giving Ayush advice on allergy medicines earlier.
Oh yeah.
And I'm no expert, but Ayush was kind of new to the allergy scene here, so I was trying to.
Is it a rite of passage?
Oh god, I was in such a bad shape. I got my COVID test done, and I was like,
Oh, yeah.
How many COVID scares have you all had? Just like personal, like self-inflicted scares through the last year.
I had one where I guess the rapid tests are like not that accurate, because what happened was I got a rapid test and it came back positive, and I was like, oh no, and it's like weird because I feel fine, and then they sent it in for like a PCR and that came back negative, and then I was like, I don't really know what to do with this information now, because it seems like there's one I need to. So then I went and got tested like 2 more times off the PCR, and I guess so like for like a day I had to like tell whatever couple friends I was hanging out with, I was like, oh, I'm so sorry, you might have COVID now. And I was also supposed to like visit my parents, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm not doing that anymore. And I think canceled plane tickets or something like that. Yeah, it was a lot, but I think it was a false positive since all the PCR tests came back negative, and I felt like 100% fine.
Got it. I was actually surprised that I did not get COVID, because I think back in Delhi, I was in Delhi in March, and I think the first 6 months of pandemic, when everything was at its peak, I was living right next to the central hospital where all COVID patients would go in Delhi, and I had at least 2 to 3 people back from my hometown who came there for treatment of something else, like heart disease or something else, right? And I went to the hospital some 5-7 times, and And then I traveled all the way to US and dined everywhere back in India, etc. And I got my, test done for antibodies, and that was negative. And I was so surprised and disappointed. And then like I got the vaccine a week ago or so, and then I sort of got this infection which I thought might be COVID. So it'd be so disappointing to not get COVID all this time, and after getting the vaccine, you get it.
Oh yeah.
We had a scare back in I think it was October. We were Jen and I went on a road trip where we were kind of just trying to drive to remote places and not interact with a lot of people, because we thought it would be kind of a nice way to get out of the house, but also not put ourselves at any serious risk. And we went to Moab in Utah, and you're out in like these canyons and you're not really interacting with people a lot, but we did go for to pick up some groceries or something, and we grabbed some takeout food every once in a while, and we were sitting there so sick, feeling so. At first, Jen was very sick, and we're trying to plan, and I was like, okay, well, maybe we should go back to San Francisco really quickly because we have like better healthcare providers there, and like better relationships with that. So we were sort of literally like planning to pack up and do like a 17-hour drive or whatever it is. and then she was feeling sick first, and then I think a few hours later I started feeling really sick. And we're like, oh my god, this is it.
Got us in the canyons.
And then we actually narrowed it down to a burrito that we ate, which is food poisoning.
Oh wow. Wow, I'm really glad it was that.
Not very well.
I've never been so happy to have food poisoning, though. It's like, this is amazing. That burrito was just horrible.
Oh my god.
The thoughts that go through your head when you think you got COVID are like the worst.
Oh,
yeah.
This is it.
I had one a couple of weeks ago, which I just thought I was such an idiot because I went on this like Hinge date in Hawaii, and I ended up getting invited to this. It was all outdoors. Hawaii is great. It's warm outside.
Are you in Hawaii right now?
Yes, I am. I sit outside my little like porch all day. It's nice.
Wait,
But
how is
then
it still
we took-
sunny there? Oh, I guess like there's a time difference.
Time zone, big
Yeah,
time
it's like
change.
4:49 right now.
And they don't even change the clocks, so they.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
What an elevated society.
I know.
That's awesome.
But yeah, I ended up at this bonfire with like 2 different people I had matched with on Hinge, one of whom I'd met, and just like a bunch of their random friends. And we were all doing like a sing-along campfire on the beach. And I was like, this is so nice. Like, I haven't had this in so long. And then the next day, one of them called me being like, hey, like someone had tested positive for COVID who was there. Like, I think they left before you got there. We're like on the other side of the bonfire, but still. And so I was like, wow, this is like the stupidest thing I've ever done. But I mean, we got tested and it was fine. And I'm thankful that everything was outdoors and we were kind of distanced. But yeah, maybe a little too gung-ho. Yeah, come to Hawaii, Michelle. Literally so many tech people here right now. It's very strange. Ayush was saying that a lot of his friends are here too, right?
Yeah, that's right. I think every second person I meet, they're like, "Oh, I'm headed to Hawaii. I have plans for that." So
Yeah, that's a lot of my friends too.
Yeah.
Really?
Also, yeah, I think Hawaii comes first with maximum number of people going there. Then comes Austin. Then comes something else. I think Miami has disappeared for some reason. It was very Miami heavy.
For some reason, a lot of my friends also went to New York, and I was just like, why now? Like,
yeah, it's just like wait 6 months.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, it's basically like Hawaii, New York, and then I think Miami was only like Twitter people. I don't know if I have any like real life friends who went to Miami.
Is the mayor of Honolulu getting out there like far?
Have you guys seen the SF now has a billboard that I've driven by a couple times now, which the mayor has like a tweet, like the mayor of Miami has a tweet on a billboard.
Wow,
And it's just like, why?
He's really inspiring though. Like a mayor pulling this off is phenomenal.
No, I mean best luck to him. It's just like it's just kind of funny.
Rubbing it,
Yeah.
rubbing some salt.
All right, I got a link for that. Here's a tweet with a picture of the billboard. Thinking about moving to Miami? DM me.
Yeah.
The funny thing is that I DM'd him and he actually responds.
Is that right?
Yeah.
What did you ask him about?
I was like, what's the scoop on the biotech scene? You making more labs so that I can come? And he was like, find out in these links.
Wow.
Like, you're not. But he was like, yeah, great to know that you're thinking about coming here. I was like, I'm from Miami. But yeah, no labs.
Wow. Wait, you are from Miami?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Oh, you grew up there?
Yeah.
Wait, so
wow.
do you know any of the local perspective on all of this that's going on? Because I only see the tweets, and I'm like, how do people who actually live there feel about this?
I don't think they've realized it. Miami,
Yeah, what is the mayor doing on Twitter?
like in Miami's, it's widespread. The suburbs kind of like merge into the city, so there's like no clear lines, and people are always coming and going because it's like right in the middle of like South America, like really connected to Europe. So you know, growing up, you always had a neighbor for like 2 years, and then you had a new neighbor. So I don't think that people really notice yet that the tech scene is there unless they're on Twitter. But
Interesting.
it's a beautiful place to be.
Would you ever go back?
I don't know. I would consider it, but part of like also having a population that like filters out every 5 years is also it also kind of leads to people like not really having a ton of respect for like community rules and stuff like that, and so you end up it ends up being kind of stressful to live there just with like the people that are there, like the way people drive or cut in line or just like are generally not super respectful. It's really wonderful though in terms of like if you like being surrounded by a ton of culture and like the way that people paint Miami in movies where it's like music everywhere and stuff like that. It's actually like that.
Oh wow.
Wow. Nice.
Yeah, like high school parties and middle school parties and stuff always had salsa dancing.
What? That's amazing.
Middle school parties.
Yeah.
We're cool, like roller rinks.
Coolest party ever.
Wow. Go to a roller skating party.
We did like bowling for birthdays.
So, yeah, bowling.
That's so funny, yeah. Yeah, and then like people loved hurricanes because it meant no school and you get to run out in the middle of a hurricane and get like slashed in the face by all this rain and it's adventurous and you can take your to the street when it floods.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
These middle schoolers were braver than me.
Yeah.
It was
all
in
hurricanes.
I grew up in the Midwest, and I don't recall having the same appreciation for tornadoes.
No. Wait, where did you grow up in?
On the south side of Chicago.
I live in Chicago right now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I love
in
the
city.
I live in South Loop.
Okay.
Yeah.
I lived like 9,500 south, 3,200 west, so
nice.
Ways out.
That's awesome. A lot of my coworkers actually grew up in that area. When I was at Exxon. Yeah, the Midwest is wonderful. I lived in Milwaukee for 4 years too, and it's just like wonderful to experience the culture. You're never ready for like a new state's culture, but you go into the Midwest and it's very strong, especially in like the Wisconsin or like northern states. Love it. Too cold though. That's why I would consider going to Miami or Hawaii, I guess.
Yeah. The move. Where are you, SF? Are you in SF?
Where am I? Yeah, I'm in SF, and I've just stayed. I mean, I've done a couple of trips to like Joshua Tree and Yosemite, and a couple of trips to Tahoe, but I have been missing the sun. And I think SF was nice up until like November, and then I did the Ojai house that I told you guys about, and then I went home, and then I came back in January, and everything was shut down, and all my friends were like in Hawaii, and I was like, oh well. Okay, I'll be here in the cold and dark, and it was raining today.
Rishab, did you say I was about to leave for dinner, but I just heard you say that you lived in Yosemite?
No. That was like, I mean, I went for like a week.
Van life.
Hello.
I got like an Airbnb like on the outskirts of Yosemite, and we just like went in most days.
That's awesome.
So nice.
That is so nice.
Yeah, I actually hadn't been before, and I like legitimately, this is like crazy. I like in retrospect, but I legitimately like did not know what I was going into. Like I honestly did like my experience with Yosemite was the macOS like pictures. Like that, like that's
wow.
like, oh, that's where that's from. That's crazy.
Yeah. Nice. It's beautiful for sure. Yeah, it's pretty nice. I was
Yeah,
like, we were
stunning.
talking about, why, like, I think I went there with some 5-7 of my friends, and everyone was like, we should just live here. This is so great. This is so nice. Yada yada.
Mhm.
It's hilarious.
It's a cool place for sure. I'm still like kind of Yosemite is really really awesome. Joshua Tree is actually maybe like tied up there for me though, because Joshua Tree, what I love about it is you can just go wherever you want. Like in Yosemite and stuff like that, it's like very frowned upon to like go off trail and stuff like that
Right.
for good reason, right? But in Joshua Tree, it's like just a desert. It's just like, oh, you see that boulder like miles away? If you want to go there and climb it, you can do that. Like be my guest.
Yeah.
Wow. Do you have beers there?
Do I have beers there? Yes.
I think I'll stick to Yosemite. Alright. Take care.
I went to Yosemite
Yeah.
a couple years ago and family trip. And so my mom, who is like obsessive about taking pictures at every corner for like a potential next family album, had us take a lot of pictures. But at the time, I kind of had short hair, like a little bit longer than this. So I was kind of feeling edgy, and I was like, I'm going to do like 2 buns like this. And so like post-trip, we're going through all the pictures, trying to find like the picture to print out and like a big thing to hang up. I looked like Mickey Mouse in every picture. And then there was one where we were like in a pyramid, and I'm all the way at the top with my 2 So my mom tasked my husband privately. She like messaged him, and she was like, "No, you're good at Photoshop. Can you please do something?" All the photos are perfect. I just have like no hair.
That's amazing. It's awful. I look back on like any picture like from high school and before, and I'm just like, what was happening? Like hairstyle, fashion choices. I was like,
Oh my
what
god, bring us
was
back.
going through your head?
Bring us there.
Bring us there. Was it like funky colors? Like what was like Rishab's hair?
I think like the first homecoming dance that I went to, I like understood, I guess, that there's an implication of fancy clothing, but my parents were like, "Do you want to go?" Like they even offered. They're like, "Should we go and get some?" And I was like, "No." And also I don't think I told them till like the day of, and so they were kind of panicking. So I ended up going in my dad's like blazer, which I was in high school and still growing, so I like literally my like arm, it was like covering my hands.
It's so cute.
It was just, like so it was like comedically oversized. Like it looked like I was playing a joke on people. Good times.
Pictures of these?
I do that I will not be showing anyone.
No.
It's so funny. It would be pretty cool.
Once I have Michelle's husband to Photoshop some better clothes on me, then I can show it to you.
You won't have hands. He won't go that far.
I'm going to share a picture that I found of what was hot when we were going to like homecoming dances. And
Oh my God. Wait,
it is truly horrible.
Okay, pictures?
I don't have any
Prom
actual
pictures.
pictures of me at prom, but
Are you
these were the
vintage.
worst.
Those pants?
Those pants.
They're
Yeah.
in now, though. Like
Those are?
they're in. Yeah,
We're
like
going back to disco times.
Wow.
yeah, like baggy, like non-fitting, or like interesting, like leg cut areas. Like they're so in. I went ice skating the other day in Chicago because that's the only thing you could have done in the middle of the pandemic in the winter. And
What
everybody
was the thing you could have done?
ice skating in
Oh,
the
yeah.
in Millennium Park. Everyone was wearing cool pants, and I was like, "What am I doing wearing leggings? I didn't get the memo. Out of place."
Yeah, I guess this is sort of like a riff on mom jeans in a way. It's kind of similar era.
Yeah.
Do you have any edgy like young DK pics on the internet?
Oh, geez, on the internet. Oh, geez, let me think.
MySpace.
I want to see like the frosted tips. Like,
Did you
I've
ever
actually
have frosted
seen
tips?
people. I didn't know.
not too late.
She was just making that up. But there are people who've uploaded things to Facebook, but they're probably not shareable. I think, right? Because I think they're probably locked down. I'll take a look and see if I can find.
This is why we need like image uploads in chat.
I know, right?
Product feature.
If we had image uploads, we could totally see me as like an 8-year-old.
That's awesome. Are you guys gonna add that?
I don't know. We never talked about that before.
I'm sure we will at some point.
Eventually.
That's awesome.
Okay. I found one, but I'm guessing this. I'm guessing nobody. This is. I'm guessing nobody can see this. It's probably locked down by Facebook permissions. See if is that visible?
Oh yeah, it is. Wait,
oh, you can see it?
Which one are you? Yeah, I can see it.
Which one am I?
Yeah.
You can't tell?
Oh, I can see it too. Whoa.
Oh wait, I totally can. Wow, I was like looking at the bear for some reason. Is that a bear? I was like,
so.
It's amazing.
That's amazing.
That's my little brother actually next to me.
Aw.
I'm gonna trust you guys. I can't see it, but I'm living through you.
Oh, I'm probably friends with the people with Mishti and Rishab on Facebook. That's probably why you can see it, right?
I'm just like not logged in on this computer, and I don't know my Facebook password. Like if my iPhone didn't have it remembered, it's over.
Wow.
This has been fun.
Yeah.
YC and beyond. I thoroughly enjoyed this.
Yes.
Thank you all.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for getting together, everybody. This was fun.
Yeah. Michelle, good luck. If you want me to recommend you, I'm happy to do that. I don't know how to get in contact with you, but if you're on Twitter, you can DM me.
Drop your Twitter.
I will. I have your Twitter. I'll DM you. That'd be awesome. I didn't realize that was a thing, but yes, that'd be great.
Cool.
Nice meeting you all.
Yeah,
good luck with it, Michelle.
Thank you so much.